Welcome to the Fertility Rewire podcast. I'm your host, Kat Stevens, a fertility therapist, educator and advocate. I want to share with you what you should have been told, what you should be being told, and basically to arm you on this journey so that you have the right information to be able to ask the right questions to get the answers you need. You can find me at fertilityrewire.com. I hope you enjoy the podcast. Well, hello and welcome to this episode of the Fertility Rewire podcast. Now, it's been a while again. I've taken a break. I've got quite a neck injury and I've been wearing a neck brace and doing all sorts of things and have had the same sort of battle with my healthcare that I know you face a lot with your fertility. But you know, I've stuck with it. I've got the routes that I need to be taking now, and things are improving massively. So I'm back doing everything that I was before. So you may have seen me on TikTok more recently, talking quite a lot about spotting and signs of low progesterone. And these videos have created lots of conversations with people getting in touch with me. And we're really starting, I think, in the fertility community. And when I say that, I mean you guys who are trying to get pregnant, really starting to try and understand, I hope, progesterone. And people are starting to see it as a potential reason why they're not falling pregnant. Now, it may well be, but like all things, it's a symptom and we need to look for the cause. So if your progesterone is low, then there will be a reason for that. And the reason in itself might not only affect progesterone, but it may affect other aspects of fertility. So a sticking plaster is not necessarily what we need now. So I'm going to explore in this episode with you a little bit more about spotting, because I know that you'll be told that spotting is normal potentially. And you know what? For some people it is. But we have this gauge of normal, don't we? It's like this range of test results of normal. And at either end of this range, we're pushing it. We're pushing it to allow people to be in the normal. So I would say to you that perhaps spotting isn't normal, and perhaps we should be looking into it more, and there are reasons for it. So first of all, what is spotting? Well, to understand spotting, you need to understand what a bleed should be like. You should go into fresh bleed. You should go into full flow of bleed when you start your period. Now, there may be the odd little bit of spotting, so a light amount of blood. Or for some people, this is more of a brown discharge. So it might be that there's a slight amount of blood in the few hours leading up to your full bleed. If this is happening for a few days, then I would look into this in more detail for sure. So when we talk about a bleed, we are talking about a flow of blood. If we're talking about spotting, we're talking about small, light amounts that you might not need anything for. It might just come away when you wipe. It might be that you wear a pad, but you don't think it's sufficient for something else. So it can look like staining in the cervical mucus. So if you are spotting before around ovulation time, sometimes that can be a staining in the cervical mucus. So, low progesterone. Let's have a look at what's actually happening. We know, I hope, that in the first half of the cycle, estrogen is in dominance. Once you have ovulated and the corpus luteum has formed on the ovary, and this is tissue that secretes progesterone to support the second half of the cycle. Now, it doesn't just support the second half of the cycle, because if you were to get pregnant, it would support your pregnancy until about 10 weeks or so, give or take a few weeks, when the placenta forms. So progesterone and its effects can affect, yes, your ability to get pregnant, but also your ability to stay pregnant. Okay, so this progesterone in the second half of your cycle is working on the lining of your uterus that has been laid down under the influence of estrogen. It prepares the lining for implantation of embryo, fertilized egg, and pregnancy. Okay, so if your progesterone isn't at sufficient levels, or, and bear with me here, it gets more complicated, or the level of progesterone itself may be sufficient, the estrogen is in excess. So estrogen is dominant and it's in excess, which kind of overpowers the effect of progesterone. So it's like it has the strength, but the estrogen is too strong against it. So it's really important, and this happens in blood tests. You'll look at an individual hormone and think, oh, well, that's within the range. But actually, how is it performing against the others, which it's meant to be in opposition with? You know, one half estrogen, second half progesterone. So here's the thing. If we're looking at the progesterone being low or not strong against a strong level of estrogen, it might be that your luteal phase, the part of your period that starts the day after ovulation until bleed, is less than 10 days long. So really, I want with my clients a luteal phase of 12 to 14 days, and anything less than 12, I look to support that. So when your progesterone drops, now for some people, it just drops. So if you're temperature charting, you'll see in your temperature, it's staying at quite a nice high level compared to before ovulation. It's at a nice high level, and then the day before your period, it plummets. Now, some people, when they're charting, will see that drop off over a period of days, and this is showing that the progesterone is waning. Now, often that's the time when the spotting might happen. So when the progesterone drops, the lining starts shedding, and if it's just dropping gradually, you can see how that might shed sporadically. This might be spotting. So it can be what we would class, we as in me with my clients, it might be what is classed, that's better English, it might be what is classed as a luteal phase defect. So it's a short luteal phase, and if you're tracking your temperature, you will see that clearly. Also, you could be testing your progesterone, and there is a way to test your progesterone. You can use the Mira fertility analyzer, which I've talked about before, Mira, M-I-R-A, or you can look to just standalone progesterone urine test, and you can get those from a company called Prove, which is P-R-O-O-V. With each of these, if you use the code Fertility Rewire, by the way, you will get a discount. So when we're looking at progesterone, we want it to be at a level, but we want it to be at a level in comparison to the estrogen as well. So when implantation happens, in approximately 25% of pregnancies, what can happen is that there could be damage to the tiny blood vessels there. Now, this is why spotting could occur around implantation, and there's lots of talk of implantation bleed. I've been pregnant 3 times. As I've shared with you, I've had a miscarriage, been pregnant 3 times, and in none of those pregnancies did I have implantation bleeding. So implantation bleeding happens in around 25% of pregnancies. You can also have early spotting in pregnancy, so early pregnancy spotting, which may be nothing. Now, in all 3 of my pregnancies, I had this. It was older blood that perhaps, had finally worked its way down, so to speak. Sorry to be too graphic there. So one of the reasons for spotting can be early pregnancy spotting. Now, it could be early pregnancy spotting due to low progesterone, and it's really, really important to get that checked. Now, here's the thing. You might go to your GP and they'll say, we'll see how you go. You might go to the hospital. They might do a scan, they might not. You can push for progesterone support in early pregnancy, and there has been research that has resulted in women who have experienced previous miscarriage, if with early spotting, they can be offered progesterone. But I have had clients who have been spotting in early pregnancy and have pushed and have received progesterone support. So that's an option, and perhaps we'll look at that in more detail in another episode. And some people have reported ovulation spotting. It's not common. It can sometimes be present in women with polycystic ovaries, women who have quite cystic ovaries, or just generally some women may have a little amount of spotting, but I would consider this spotting more of a staining of the cervical fluid. Other reasons for spotting: perimenopause. Now, it's big, isn't it now? It's always been there, but it's now talked about a lot. Perimenopause is not the menopause. Peri stands for before, so it's kind of pre-menopause, but it can be 10 years pre-menopause. So you can, of course, still be fertile in this time. So I don't want people to get too worried or anxious about this. So if you were to menopause at the age of 50, your perimenopause might start at 40. If we were to menopause earlier, the perimenopause may start earlier, and not everybody has symptoms. But if you are experiencing spotting, and if you are experiencing perhaps premenstrual symptoms and mood alterations and tender breasts in the time leading up to your period, this is the same as if you're not perimenopausal, bear with me, that could be a sign that you have low progesterone, or remember, your progesterone is not strong enough against the excess of estrogen. In the perimenopause, one of the first things that happen to your hormonal balance is that your progesterone drops. So it is really, really important to support the progesterone in perimenopause. Another reason for spotting could be early pregnancy issues with ectopic pregnancy. Now, this is a serious issue, and never in early pregnancy should you avoid spotting or accept that it's normal, because an ectopic pregnancy can be extremely serious and it can be life-threatening if it were to rupture. So if your spotting is associated with cramping, with nausea and dizziness, and you're in early pregnancy, then as a matter of urgency, you need to be seen to rule out ectopic pregnancy. Another reason for spotting can be vaginal infection. So it may be more of a discharge, there may be some blood, there may be some old blood in it. Some conditions lead to spotting, and these are often these really estrogen dominant conditions where estrogen is dominant. Okay, we can change that, and never accept that, well, I have endometriosis, so this is how it is. There is an awful lot you can do for endometriosis, and I have worked with a large number of clients where we have made massive differences, and they've achieved pregnancy and stayed pregnant. So endometriosis is such an estrogen dominant condition, as are fibroids even. So, sorry, I'm laughing. I'm sitting here in a neck collar because I have to wear it for short periods of the day, and I think it affects how I'm speaking and thinking. Anyway, I will continue. So if your progesterone is low, or it's powerless in a way against the estrogen dominance that can be in effect within these conditions. So there's an awful lot of reasons for spotting, isn't there? But if we come back to this low progesterone or a luteal phase defect or estrogen dominance, then how can we make a difference? What can we look to? Now, obviously, this isn't a general advice for everybody. And when I work with people, we look specifically, we look deeper, and we come up with a plan to work on the luteal support and progesterone support as well. One of the first things that we look to do is to strengthen ovulation. And within temperature charting, you can see a kind of a slow rise temperature in ovulation or straight up improvement. And that gives us an indication of the strength of ovulation. So we would work with a holistic approach to increase the strength of your ovulation with simple techniques that you undertake at home under my instruction. And this helps to strengthen the progesterone output of the corpus luteum. We would also look at hormonal balance. So if the estrogen is in dominance, what can we do to support the body to get rid of this excess? Now, this estrogen dominance will not necessarily show itself on a blood test. Remember I said how it's a balance between the two. And the estrogen can be within the body, and it might be being stored within the body. So we need to look at how to support the body to get rid of it, to support the liver and the body in general to get rid of it. And again, there are ways and steps that you can undertake at home under my instruction to balance this out. One of the big things we need to do, and I know we've talked about this in previous episodes, is to lower cortisol. Cortisol is a stress hormone that is secreted by the body. When you're trying to get pregnant, your stress can be high. And, any amount of people can tell you just need to relax, you just need to stop trying, and then you'll be calm. And then as soon as you relax, you'll get pregnant. And that may be true. But how can you relax? You can't just switch off this desire to be parents. You can't switch off the anxiety and the worry about what's wrong and if it's never going to happen. So we can look at ways to manage your stress, which can move toward a reduction of stress. So you can be stressed and then you can stay stressed, or you can be stressed and you manage it and therefore you start to lower your cortisol. Because if you were out in the wild, if you were a different sort of mammal out in the wild, aware of predators, and your cortisol would be high, your body's not going to let you get pregnant. And that's the same for you. Your body will stop progesterone in favour of cortisol. So if it's producing cortisol, it's not producing as much progesterone. And you can see how it's a very clever system of the body, but you're not surrounded by predators. But your body doesn't know the difference. You are nervous, you are anxious, you are worried. If this continues over prolonged periods or repeatedly, then the cortisol is going to be high because you're now in survival mode. And this is not the time to be getting pregnant. Because for one, if you're pregnant, you're not going to be able to run away very effectively from these consistent predators that aren't leaving you alone. And were you to give birth to your baby, the predators would probably eat your baby. So you can see how the design is there. The design hasn't evolved with the human and the human brain. The design is there to switch off the possibility of getting pregnant. And that's an important thing to consider. So no, I'm not telling you to just relax, but we can look at ways to reduce your stress levels in your body. Yes, we can look at ways to reduce stressors, things that cause a stress reaction, maybe in other areas of your life. And as soon as you have an understanding of what could be going on with your fertility and you can see small changes taking place, believe me, your stress levels do start to reduce, because it's the not knowing and the worry that often causes the real issues. So within my treatment plan that I work with people, we look at male and female factors. Yes, we look for big factors, the one factor potentially, but more often than not, we have lots of micro factors that are feeding in to making one big fertility factor. There's lots of little things that could be affecting the stress and the worry and the cortisol production. Pelvic congestion, some people spot because actually, and I should have mentioned this earlier, because they haven't fully cleared the lining in their bleed. There's still some hanging around. So when the cervix opens, ready for your bleed, that old lining can come forward. So if you've got brown spotting before your red bleed starts, we could be looking at old blood, we could be looking at lower progesterone. If you're having brown spotting, darker spotting towards the end of your period, if it's a longer period, that could just be that the blood has oxidized and it's turned brown as it gets older. So it's really important to work with the body to make sure your uterus is clearing properly, and there are ways that we can support that. As I mentioned, increase ovulation strength, increase corpus luteum strength and therefore progesterone, support sperm quality, support egg quality. And this can be that if you're in a kind of holding pattern with the doctors because you haven't been trying long enough to get your tests, then there's an awful lot you can do in this time. And if I could just get everybody 3 months, for the 3 months before they want to start trying, if they don't try and they give me 3 months to work on their fertility as a couple, I know that there would be such easier pregnancies. I know not for everyone, but for a large majority of people who have been kept in this holding pattern, who haven't been able to get pregnant. These micro factors are affecting that have all built into one. There's a massive amount that we can do before the stress takes hold, and you start off with a positive outlook because you are doing everything you need to do in that 3 months, and then we know what tests to look at after that. Okay, so I work with people in that holding pattern. I also work with people who've had tests and been told everything is normal, but they're still not getting pregnant. And I also work with people who are going through fertility treatments or have been through fertility treatments or are trying for their next baby, and fertility treatments is not an option for them. And there are lots of different ways I work with people. So if you did want to know more about that, then if you're not on my mailing list, you can do that. Go to the website, fertilityrewire.com. There's a free download there, 6 things stopping you from getting pregnant. And you can join the email list, and you will, get regular-ish emails from me, depending on what's going on. I work one-to-one, I work in group programs. There's lots of different ways. But what's really exciting, and please do get on the email list if you are not on it, is I'm going to start running a series of workshops where I'm going to look into specific factors within fertility, and just, spread a little bit more information, similar to in the podcast, but looking at more specific areas. I'm planning to do some generally on fertility, explain a little bit more about what you can do, what you could do if we were working together, and also I'm going to dig in a little bit to have some specific sessions on polycystic ovary syndrome, endometriosis. We're going to look also, and this is a big area that I get lots of messages about from people, I spoke recently on TikTok about gaslighting and medical gaslighting, and is that how you're feeling it's happening for you? And if you are overweight, as in your BMI is above the level at which you qualify for fertility treatments, you just will be sent away until you lose weight. And it's important to consider all the factors involved with that, and the emotional effect that that's having on you, because as much as we can say, well, if you really want a baby, you'll lose weight, we know it's not that easy. There's lots of factors at play, lots of huge emotional and psychological factors at play that are actually being made a little bit worse by what you're being told at the doctors. So I went off tangent a little there. So you can learn more about progesterone and other factors with the workshops that are coming up, and I'll be letting people know about those on my emails, in my emails even. And if you're not following me on TikTok, there's lots of short videos explaining a few factors on there. So that is Cat, I think it's Cat Fertility Rewire. I'll put it in the show notes. And yeah, so if you are spotting, have a think after you've listened to this, what factors might there be there? If you need any more support on how to find that out, then please get in touch. You can get in touch by email at kat@fertilityrewire.com. You can get in touch with me via socials on Instagram and TikTok. It would be great to hear from you. And also, if you've got any thoughts on the podcast, how are you enjoying it? What more would you like me to do? Is there anything specific you want me to cover? Then please get in touch. But as ever, take care. I really hope you enjoyed that episode. And whether you're trying for your first child, your second child, or more, whether you've just started on your journey or you've been on the twists and turns of this for a long time, I really hope this information is going to help you ask the right questions to get the right answers. And if you want to know any information about Fertility Rewire, about working with me, or the free resources that I have available, please visit www.fertilityrewire.com. Until next time.